Hello and welcome to this Equinix and CDOTrends technology discussion. I'm Lachlan Colquhoun, the Australian and New Zealand correspondent for CDOTrends, and I'm the host and facilitator for our discussion, which has the title, The Way Towards Hybrid Multi-Cloud. As organizations pursue digital transformation, there is no one-size-fits-all use case, and each organization is different in the way they reach their customers and collaborate with their supply chains. One thing that is similar, however, is that network computing, storage and applications are moving away from centralized data centers to a distributed infrastructure positioned ever closer to important edge locations. As interconnection and data exchange between businesses and cloud services grows at an exponential rate, digital infrastructure is becoming increasingly global, interconnected and agile. For digital leaders, the challenge is to configure the right digital infrastructure, and increasingly that means embracing the hybrid multi-cloud and a mix of on-premise data centers, private clouds, and/or public clouds. For today's Equinix Australia discussion, I'm joined by Michael Black. He's the Senior Solution Architect at Equinix, and by Jason Yu, the Director of Strategy and Innovation at global telecoms company AT&T, to discuss the infrastructure challenges facing contemporary businesses and the solutions. Michael, if I can start with you, please start by telling us about the hybrid cloud. What are the drivers for organizations to go down this route today?
Thanks for the question, Lachlan. I'm happy to answer that. In terms of hybrid cloud and where organizations are transitioning, there's been a monumental shift in terms of where organizations are looking at their current architectures. In the last couple of years, there has been a transition from where customers have seen that they wanted to move to cloud and they had an all-in cloud strategy. But in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a shift going back towards a hybrid architecture. And in terms of hybrid cloud, it's really about organizations being able to look at what they have, how they can transition and reap the benefits of being able to A, move to the public cloud in a really agile manner, and B, being able to look at what they currently have today and see whether or not they can repurpose, refactor, or sunset some of those applications that they do have. So there's a large reliance still on the ability to be able to A, host those applications in distributed locations such as Equinix, and being able to build hybrid architectures that it allows them to realize the benefits of the cloud. So having both is really critical from a hybrid cloud perspective. And just to give you a bit of context with that is organizations recently, from a numbers perspective, we recently released an article around how organizations are realizing multi-cloud models and hybrid cloud. And just in the year alone, there's been a 12% increase in terms of hybrid cloud deployment. So organizations are realizing multiple clouds at once. So an organization may be using Azure at one point for Office 365. Organizations may be using Amazon, and bringing that all together and being able to have that connectivity and interconnection between those footprints are really critical to any organization transforming. So digital transformation is one of the key drivers for organizations to realize hybrid cloud. And the second one that I see is organizations wanting to be able to deploy applications and workflows in a really agile manner. So they're really demanding a lot out of how they transition as an organization. And Equinix is, really well positioned in terms of like providing a hybrid cloud solution, or I guess architectures in that point and a strategy.
So it sounds as if the choice for hybrid cloud is more about operational capabilities than it is about risk and compliance.
It's a bit of both. So organizations are looking at from a risk standpoint around, if I was to go and manage my entire environments from the traditional way in the legacy fashion, having to manage a lot of the cost in terms of I have vast amounts of footprint, I have compute, I have applications, I have teams. And then I'm looking at from an efficiency perspective where I want to realize the benefits of moving to the cloud and moving to as a service model and really just looking for an outcome. So it's a mixture of both, but it's more on the operational efficiency where organizations want to be able to deploy an application or a workflow within minutes as opposed to months in the traditional way of managing infrastructure and IT architectures.
So it's largely an enabler of agility then.
Massively. The organizations that I do speak today, and I had a conversation today with a particular organization enterprise, it was really around reaping the benefits in terms of that operational efficiency, being able to move from one state to another and being able to realize that really quickly is really driving organizations. And since the inception of DevOps, SecOps, NetOps, FinOps, whatever it may be, is really driving the behavior of changing the way that the traditional infrastructure mindset into more of a developer focused and being able to access things through lines of code is really driving a lot of organizations to transform in that manner.
Let's talk about the edge. What are you observing in terms of decentralization, and what sort of issues is this presenting in terms of IT infrastructure?
I think the biggest impact has been COVID, in terms of where COVID has really driven organizations to invest in agility, remote workforce and remote working. When you look at traditional architectures, it's always been a centralized manner. I move all my applications, all my critical business applications, communications, I would move it into a central location, and then I have everyone access that. But there's been a massive shift in terms of how COVID has impacted organizations, the remote workforce and people being able to work from home has really made organizations shift their spending, bringing spending forward to invest in agility and flexibility, and really be able to focus on distributing those architectures. And it really comes down to physics. If you move something closer to where everyone is, you're going to get a better performance impact. And that really ties in nicely with, A, our global footprint, and B, our partners in AT&T providing that network to be able to bring them all closer together. And the lastly is really around re-architecting that hybrid workforce. Be able to deploy remote solutions at remote locations closer to the users is critical from a distributed architecture perspective. And that's where the shift is going, and 5G is also impacting that as well.
Would you agree that it's not a one-size-fits-all effect, and that organizations really need to find their own path?
Every organization is different, and I'm sure that Jason would go through his many engagements would see that. Every customer, we always try and fit them into a cookie-cutter approach. It never works.
Yeah, exactly
Jason,
right, Michael.
If you've got an opinion on that.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think that the standards of architecture framework, certain key technology building blocks that underpin a digital transformation, moving to cloud, moving to hybrid cloud, the network that supports that, and the security that supports that shift to public and hybrid cloud. Absolutely, there's those consistent technology blocks, but there's the intricacies and the nuances of each particular organization, where you have to fit all those building blocks together to get the outcome that you're looking for. It's interesting you talk about COVID-19. In terms of digital transformation, I saw this Twitter post last year, and it was around, well, what's been the driving factor for digital transformation? Was it the CTO, CDO, or COVID-19? And the joke there was that COVID-19, and absolutely, when you look at the results, the analysis and the surveys done by leading consultancy companies, COVID-19 has accelerated digital transformation. And in the customer conversations that I've had, the organizations that pivoted early to cloud and hybrid cloud, so looked at carrier hotels such as Equinix to host public and private apps, who moved to software as a service, and then correspondingly shifted their network architecture, were far and away more adaptable and able to pivot the organization to that COVID-19 situation last year, and is also setting them up for the future in terms of what the business is going to look like in a post-COVID-19, and particularly with work from home and coming back to the office, which is still being defined.
And where are you seeing customers in terms of SD-WAN and security at the edge? And are you seeing a lot of that in your customer engagements to enable remote working?
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. And I think over the last couple of years, particularly the last 18 months, we've seen a big uptake in terms of the transition from traditional network architecture, so hub spoke or any-to-any with private networks, to more now distributed networks. So using the technology such as software-defined WAN on the edge, and then using a variety of different network transports, so MPLS, internet, wireless such as 4G, and 5G now, which is becoming more mainstream across the region. And so the network's now pivoting to support the cloud and applications that Equinix is providing in the carrier hotels. So, for example, we had one particular client who is a partner of both Equinix and AT&T, and we pivoted them to a software-defined network architecture a couple of years ago. And so now they're able to leverage Office 365, Workday, other applications out of carrier hotels or their cloud hubs, and we're providing that foundational network, software-defined network for them.
Yeah, it's amazing to see.
Which is, yeah, I mean, what's next though is going to be that next evolution, which is going to be a Sassy architecture, which we'll get to very soon.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that one. But Jason, can you tell us about AT&T's business in Australia, about the solutions you provide for your clients, who I imagine are largely big corporates and multinational organizations with the people and operations distributed through the world?
Yeah, thanks, Lachlan. AT&T's, we kind of describe ourselves as a bit of a best kept secret, a bit of like the KFC secret recipe, because we don't do a lot of advertising, and we certainly don't have a consumer market. But what we do, and we've been in the market here in Australia and New Zealand for 20 years, and been in the Asia Pacific region for nearly 30, is we provide best of breed global enterprise solutions. So, you think of the top companies in the ASX, for example, and top global brand names across the different industry verticals leverage AT&T's next generation networks. They leverage our edge technology. They leverage our professionalism and experience in terms of integrating the solutions. And they leverage our security expertise to be able to provide a robust, secure framework and secure solution around these evolving and emerging technologies. So, it's something which, we're very proud of in terms of the experience here in the region. Because I think at the end of the day, you can have the great technology, but it's the experience and people that brings it all together. And that's something that we do for global multinationals.
And can you tell us how you work with Equinix to deliver these sort of solutions to your clients?
Yeah, Equinix has been a great foundational partner and part of our ecosystem of cloud providers and carrier hotels for a number of years. And we've recently expanded that global partnership now to deeply embed our core network services and our network fabric into the capabilities that Equinix provide. And so for our clients and Equinix's clients, we can provide a holistic end-to-end solution in terms of around cloud hubs, leveraging Equinix's facilities, integrating our software-defined network into Equinix's cloud exchanges. So from a customer perspective, they have a single pane of glass to be able to orchestrate and instantiate network services into cloud services and cloud exchanges that Equinix provides. So it's a very deep partnership there.
Yeah, you've touched on some great things there, Jason, in terms of what we've done together as, our organization's partnership has been flourishing in terms of the interconnection and providing that flexibility and connectivity, the optimization in their networks, and being able to give customers the ability to consume your services within minutes as opposed to weeks. I mean, that in itself is help organizations who are transforming, and the demand from a network perspective to give them the cloud experience. You are leading the way in terms of what we're doing from a joint partnership perspective. And it's really key to that hybrid and multi-cloud solutions where they can come to you and we can work together around, hey, how do we take a customer from where they are today, and what does that roadmap look like in 3 years, and how do we integrate, like you said, SASE-based solutions, SD-WAN networks, and the hotel analogy that you're using, which is cool. I'm going to steal that. And it's really key to organizations transforming. It's funny that a lot of organizations want to try and go on this journey of going to cloud and hybrid, and everyone thinks that it's just easy, but everyone forgets about one of the most critical elements of that is the networking side of things, and providing that plumbing and making it easy for organizations to consume. It's so very key, and it's not talked about in the sexy way of cloud as it is today.
Yeah, I think that's part of the benefit, the value, I think, for clients. And we've certainly seen it from our joint clients, right, Michael, where organizations move to cloud, and underpinning that has to be the network. And so for organizations, if they're going through that digital transformation, which is an imperative now, you need to combine those different technology layers to drive and deliver the success for a business transformation, whether it's cost efficiencies, operational efficiencies, or delivering a better user experience for both the customers or their employees. And so that's where I think that value of having that combined partnership for enterprises is key.
When we were chatting prior to the event, you were talking about a global financial services company that you'd worked with as a potential case study that we might mention here. Can you talk about that as in generalized terms about the way they configure themselves to advantage?
Yeah, sure. So a mutual client of ours, a global organization, one of the early adapters of technology, and I think being one of those early adapters in terms of thinking about cloud apps and network has enabled them to really take advantage of the COVID-19 and really establish themselves in terms of being a premier leader in the industry they're in. And so a few years ago, we sat down with them and had a chat to them around their network architecture. What were their plans around the future state? So thinking about moving to cloud, thinking about moving to Office 365, thinking about what their users were going to be like in the business and the business risk. And so we re-architected their network to be a hybrid network. So utilizing best of breed software-defined WAN technologies, looking at in terms of security architecture and integrating that. And then importantly, how does that fit into cloud and hosting, which is the piece that Equinix does exceptionally well. And so over the last couple of years, we've been able to transform their network to be hybrid, enabled them to rapidly adapt to the COVID-19 situation last year. And with that partnership, we've established cloud hubs, cloud edges, which I'm sure Michael will talk a little bit more shortly. And now we're in a position, and they're in a position now that we can take that next S-curve of network architecture and start to build out that secure access service edge or Sassy framework over the next couple of years.
So
from your perspective, Michael, what's your perspective in terms of our joint client?
I know this client in particular, so I know that during COVID, that organization in particular was able to extremely move their network connectivity. I mean, bandwidth requirements and spinning up new connectivity within minutes. It was amazing to see. All I saw was a vast amount of capacity being turned on and within minutes. And they'd be able to cope with the people working from home in that transition. And it all comes down to what you just said, right? Re-architecting their network from a hybrid perspective, embedding Equinix into a joint partnership and really helping that customer transforming during the COVID times. And I believe from that it's actually driven more opportunity for you as well to even drive them further into that Sassy type of architecture and where they want to be in the next couple of years. And they are one of many clients that I've seen during COVID coming to Equinix and jointly and saying, how can you help us deliver these outcomes around what does the future look like post-COVID? How do I allow that remote working workforce? How do I accelerate my application delivery to be more Sassy, to be delivered at the edge? And really moving away from those centralized architectures, sitting in central locations and distributing that out to the edge.
Yeah. I think that's a great summary.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Lachlan, that when we look at these clients, I think, and I read a McKinsey report just recently where organizations, if they haven't moved to cloud, then they're certainly going to be laggards in their particular industry. They're certainly going to struggle in terms of continuing to drive growth and to meet the demands of a very competitive industry, no matter what industry they're in. So key building blocks, cloud, software as a service, and a network that can pivot and expand and align to cloud and apps. And let's not forget, with the rise and continued rise of cyber threats, having a robust security framework around that is critically important.
Can we get Sassy there?
That's a great point.
It's a great expression, Sassy. I like that a lot. Is there any sense that in the sort of Sassy world, it's kind of a post-legacy environment where organizations can leave that kind of stuff behind it and access the services that providers like you deliver to really be able to roll out new services and integrate applications much more easily than they have in the past?
Yeah, definitely that is one of those outcomes, Lachlan, is to take what Michael was describing earlier around that whole software DevOps approach, and then to apply that across the different technology blocks. So from a Sassy architecture, there's essentially 5 key building blocks around that. One is around software-defined WAN, which is one of those key tenets that AT&T has deep domain experience. The next blocks are around security, so secure web gateways. So if you're bringing your remote users' traffic to an application using the internet, then you want to do that in a secure way, and secure web gateways offer you that ability to do that. Firewall as a service. So as we're moving data to more carrier hotels or Equinix and software as a service, we want to ring fence that, and we want to use a firewall as a service. So moving security from prem closer to the data where that's residing. A big piece of that Sassy framework is zero trust. So from moving from I'm going to trust everyone to I'm going to trust no one now. And so I'm going to identify who you are, and then I'm going to allow you to the applications that only you, Lachlan, for example, would have access to. And then the other key one is CASB. So where is my data going? Where are my users dropping that data, for example, into a Dropbox? Is that an enterprise Dropbox? So being able to monitor and secure and block that if required. And so these technologies have to integrate together. And look, it's still evolving, Lachlan. So it's still very early days around Sassy architecture. But this is why it's important. Yeah. For CIOs and CSOs to work with organizations like AT&T and Equinix, because we partner together, and so we can provide that level of advice and experience across those different domains. Michael, what's your thoughts?
You touch nicely in terms of like what that means. Some of the key things that I'll add on to that is really around when we start looking at Sassy in the infancy of that and where that trend is going, and around Equinix and our ecosystems and the private interconnection that we do have throughout our whole platform. It's really key in terms of that whole approach around zero trust and only really need to connect who I need to, and the prevalence of our platform in terms of being able to have a connection between either a cloud provider or a customer or themselves or another, or your network. It's really key to organizations when they start thinking about that. And then part of our joint proposition is really around the interconnection oriented architecture and how we bond in Sassy, how we bond in SD-WAN, and how do we give customers access to our dense ecosystem to be able to facilitate any transformation or the security from a sovereignty perspective or compliance. It's really key on our platform. So it's a nice weaving story that you've got there.
Well, I sit back and I think about being a CIO or a CTO for an organization, and technology is moving so fast now. I mean, you look at some of the cool stuff that you're doing at Equinix with that bare metal project that you're doing, what you're doing in terms of the software-defined infrastructure, the moving landscape with security, the moving landscape of network technologies, internet, 5G. It is a complex world now. And so, if I'm a CIO, I'm having to navigate all this and then stitch it all together to then support the enterprise. It's very complex. So, being able to draw on the experience, say, of Equinix and AT&T together and providing some advice there, I think is something which, you and I would welcome the opportunity to chat to the CIOs out there and offer some advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Michael, I understand that AT&T are opening a new data center in Perth. I'm just interested in learning a bit about that and how that's going to enhance your capability.
Yeah, so we are currently announced a new data center in Perth, and our good friends at AT&T are actually have actually deployed with us today a point of presence. And I mean, if you start thinking about organizations and that real capability that's available, and bolstering together our integrations from a software-defined interconnection, being able to get customers online, being able to get them access to our suite of offerings together. AT&T have fronted a lot of our digital and our virtual offerings to give them a full suite. And I mean, that market in itself, in terms of Perth, it's an untapped resource for us as Equinix in Australia. And AT&T have realized that the massive opportunity in terms of the mining vertical out there is enormous as a joint partnership. And I know that, if you look at, ask Jason how many mining organizations that he's spoken to over the years and the opportunity that is so untapped. I mean, they got the right mix right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting. It's very exciting, Lachlan, for those global mining organizations that are out there in WA, and just to bring it to life, in terms of what it means. So it may not be well known out there, but a large number of these miners are running nearly fully autonomous mine sites here, mine sites of the future. So they've been doing it for a number of years, autonomous trucks, autonomous trains, autonomous diggers. And those mine sites are generating huge volumes of data at these mine sites, terabytes and terabytes of data. And so those mine sites need to have very robust, low latency networks, number one. Number two, they have to be reliable, because if you're having all these autonomous trucks moving around, you need to ensure that there's low latency and the communications is robust. Those mining organizations also too need to derive data and insights and be able to determine and control that whole operation, typically remotely, Lachlan. So the ability now to consume that data, analyze that data locally using such as edge technology, maybe a private 5G network at the mine site, and then transmitting that data to Equinix's hosting facility here in Perth, and using their private data stack and maybe some cloud services is hugely beneficial for organizations such as global mining organizations, because now I can derive data intelligence, I can perform and I can respond to those applications and the data I'm getting very, very rapidly, as opposed to having to then perhaps transmit that data across the country or internationally to then derive an insight and then make a decision. So it's going to be hugely beneficial for those organizations.
That's a really nice 5G use case, which is about processing data closest to the edge. I've been trying to find a really good 5G use case. Still haven't found a good one yet, but you're pretty close in terms of what the mining sector can do in terms of IoT and the vast range of data that they have available. And you're exactly right in terms of being able to process that information as close as possible and actually only derive what they actually need and move it to a cloud, for example, to do further analysis. I mean, that in itself is the best use case that I've seen so far.
Before we go, I'd just like to raise the topic of platforms in the context of the discussion we've been having about infrastructure. It seems to be, the big buzzword for 2021. Organizations are trying to create platforms for infrastructure for their IT. How consistent with what we've been talking about is the platform approach?
Well, I think what platforms enable is what they call the network effect, Lachlan. So what I mean by that is if I have my data, or I have the ability to control my network from a platform, then I have the ability now to make changes and adjust my network or cloud or my applications at scale very rapidly. So for example, software-defined WAN has a centralized orchestration platform. So historically, where we needed to make changes on edge devices, we may have needed to go to each of those edge devices and maybe type in some command line interface to make a change, for example. But now, through a centralized orchestration platform, I can define a particular site as a particular small site, for example, and maybe it's got some business policy, some application usage. I can create one template and then deploy it globally to thousands of sites through that platform. What I can also do is then integrate that platform with some APIs into other systems. And so now, from an operations and a day two service perspective, I now have greater visibility and greater control and agility to make changes to my infrastructure and technology services across the enterprise.
It's an interesting view that you have around platform, because in the Equinix world, our view of a platform is completely different in terms of, I provide the building blocks to be able to allow an organization to transform. And I see a huge synergy between us, because I look at my platform and I look at Equinix and what we have from our, virtualization stack in terms of network edge, virtual routers and firewalls that AT&T use, our bare metal offering that you are looking at as well. And it's really nice to see that, we support you in transforming the organizations. And that's where I see true synergy between us, because we can't succeed as well without you. And what you just said in terms of like control planes and things, being able to augment all of the Equinix services via API, I mean, that in itself and presenting that to an organization is truly transformational.
Just finally then, Jason, you were saying before that that for many organizations, they're at the early stage of this transformation. Can we get some trend predictions from both of you for 2021 and beyond? Can we start, Michael, can we start with you?
So I'm seeing a massive shift towards Sassy. So I mean, that in itself is really going to drive the market in a big way. Big data is still a massive thing in the market around how organizations look at BI and how they get insights from their data. It's still driving. AI ML is huge. That's going to be the future for us, and really around how our platform offerings augment to support that. And I see that that's huge in the market today.
Jason?
Yeah, I echo those thoughts, Michael. What I also see from a networking perspective, I see Sassy continuing to evolve and gain momentum over the next few years. What I also predict is, I think we're just at the beginning, the cusp of 5G. There's been lots of hype around it, and I think we're just starting to see a bit of uptick momentum. It's been primarily driven from consumer, but I believe we're going to see more of that from enterprise. And so we're going to see a combination of 5G, private 5G becoming more prevalent, smart manufacturing, mine sites we talked about, becoming more mainstream. We're going to see edge computing become more prevalent within industries. And I think we're also going to see this continuation of cloud hubs, cloud edges, and this aggregation of network services. What I do also see is one particular piece, which is as it gets more complex, and it's going to, I think organizations have to think about how are they going to manage all this complexity? Are they going to do it in-house? Are they going to do co-managed? And there is that trend of doing co-managed, Lachlan, where they manage some and they get a service provider to manage others. Or do they look to get an end-to-end managed service provider? So I think they're the trends that I'm going to see occurring over the next few years.
Thank you so much, General. I think we're out of time. It's been a very, very lively discussion. I thank you both, Michael Black from Equinix and Jason Yu from AT&T. Thank you so much for your time on this discussion today.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Lachlan.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Lachlan.